When Chuck DeGroat was trying to decide what to write about in his next book, he sent out a tweet to pastors and ministry leaders to ask them what they wanted him to write about, and this is what they said. Write a book about how to love the toughest people in our lives, in our organizations, and in our churches. The desire for a book on this topic makes sense because as DeGroat interacted with pastors, he learned that one menace that affected them more than any other was difficult people. Perhaps this is why 80% of new ministry leaders leave the ministry within 5 years. But guess what? Difficult people aren't going away. This is a problem that cannot just be avoided. What's problematic is that many pastors said they received little to no education on how to deal with difficult people in their seminary training. We need to better learn how to love the toughest people around us. And this isn't a problem just in the ministry world. It happens in businesses too. There's dysfunctional behavior and relationships between bosses and those he or she supervises. So what's the solution? Wouldn't it be great if people were like machines? So we could just perfect our craft of being mechanics and of fixing people? What if we learned the best 3 phrases to say to make people listen and obey? How about the best 2 emails to send when our coworkers are being dysfunctional? However, we are reminded daily that people are not machines. They are not things to be fixed. Relationships with people are hard, and people are complex. So what we need are less mechanics and more gardeners. Gardeners who tend the souls of ourselves because we totally contribute to the problem, and tend the souls of those around us. Those people who are complex, beautiful, broken, productive, paralyzed, fruitful, and foolish. Gardeners who continually seek to be human, to be in relationship with God and with others. So what we need are less mechanics and more gardeners. Because people are not machines to be fixed, but gardens to be tended. So the solution we are going to be focusing on today is living out of whole relationship with God, with ourselves, and with others, because we are relational to our core. But before we get there, let's look a little closer as to why it is hard to be in whole relationship with our neighbors. The Christian story begins with God, a relational God, the Trinity existing in forever self-giving love. And we were created very good in the image of this triune God, meant for relationship with Him, with others, and with all of creation. But this story took a tragic turn when humanity rebelled. They rejected the intended relationship and turned on into themselves. Their heart became divided and their loves were misdirected. This caused personal, social, and relational fragmentation. And just as the disease is relational, so too is the cure relational. Just as we are wounded in the context of relationships, so too can we be healed in the context of relationships. For God sent His Son, in the flesh, to be relational, to bridge the gap and pave the way for reconciliation. Restoring relationships is the solution. This means that in order to love the toughest people around us, we must lead from a posture of relational wholeness, reflecting the original intention of things. Although relational wholeness cannot be curated in 3 minutes, nor adopted from a 3-point sermon, perhaps there are 3 characteristics of relational wholeness that we can learn today. First, when we are relationally whole, we are able to look at others remembering their original identity and purpose, as created beings made in the image of God. Our lives began in the garden, in that original goodness. And would it so much change if we loved being able to see each other's original goodness? Yes, all of those difficult people. The coworker who always shows up late and doesn't work hard, the classmate who always rebuttals what you say, or the family member who continues to relapse in their addiction. The second characteristic is this: we must live an examined lifestyle. If any of us thought that we were out of the equation as to why it's hard to love tough people, we were all wrong. We've all taken steps away from this original goodness and have traded it in for some cheap imitation. We carry around in us insecurities, failures, brokenness, and we believe the voice telling us that we'd be more satisfied with X, Y, or Z. So we need to open up this bag, open up our past, open up our story that only makes sense in the light of God's story. And although life batters us around and we put on masks and fronts to hide our brokenness, our original selves are still there. the holiness of our original goodness still echoes, and this self is the way to freedom. So here's the third characteristic. As a way to love the toughest people, we must point others to and remind others of their truest identity. We are created in and for lasting union with God, with others, and with all of creation. Pointing others to their original identity in Christ is essential for leaders who are trying to love the toughest of people. And toward the end of his book, de Groot says it best. I'm learning that people crave honesty from their leaders. They want us to tell the truth even if it hurts a bit. Of course, that doesn't include shaming and put-downs. We need to tell the truth from our own place of wholeness, honest about our own blindness and faults. But from a place of humility, we can speak to others with vision and with courage, calling them to live into their deepest identity as new creations in Christ. So here it is. What makes loving the toughest people difficult? Broken relationships. And what makes it possible? Whole relationships. We are all in need of salvation, the putting back together of our broken human souls. And here's the good news of the gospel. God is putting all things back together. He is repairing all division and mending all broken hearts. So let's pursue more wholeness as a way to love the toughest people.